Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're diving into a theory about consciousness that is, well, let's just say it's pretty out there. It all starts with something we take for granted, sunlight. But what if the wildest thing about light isn't what it does to the world around us, but what it's doing inside our own heads? Okay, let's just jump right in with the big question, the one that this whole idea hinges on. We've all been taught that our brains are these incredible, but ultimately slow chemical computers. But what if that's only half the story? What if there's another system running in the background, a hidden network that operates at the speed of light? You know, that thing you might just call a hunch or intuition.
So here's how you can think about it. On one side, you've got the classic stack. This is the neuroscience you learned in school. Neurons firing, synapses, all that electrochemical stuff. It works, for sure, but it's slow. Then you have this other idea, the wild stock. This theory says our neurons are also communicating with biophotons, tiny, faint flashes of light, creating a whole other data layer that's running at, well, light speed, a hidden operating system.
Now, before we get too deep into the wild stuff, we've got to ground this whole thing in what we actually know is real. So let's start with the proven, undeniable link between the light outside your window and the clock ticking inside your brain. Because, make no mistake, light already runs you. You just don't really notice it until it's late. This is basically a biological chain of command, and it's super clear. Light hits your retina, and that sends a direct signal to a tiny little part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN for short. Now, think of the SCN as the master clock for your entire body. It's the boss that tells your pineal gland when it's time to open up the melatonin faucet, or when to shut it off.
And here's the really crucial part. This isn't just about sleep. It's more like a daily symphony going on inside you. Daylight hits, and boom, you get a surge of serotonin to keep you feeling good and focused. Then, when it gets dark, the whole cycle flips, and melatonin comes in to help you wind down. Our entire mental well-being can ride on this simple rhythm. Light is literally the switch, playing this call and response with your brain every single day.
All right, so we've established that light is a master regulator. We know that's true. So now, let's see how this idea gets bigger, how we go from a known biological fact to a much more speculative and honestly a pretty mind-bending theory about light being an internal communication system. And that brings us to these things called biophotons. For a long time now, scientists have known that our cells, including our neurons, give off this super faint glow. The standard explanation has always been that it's just, well, waste heat, metabolic exhaust. But here's the radical twist. What if it's not waste? What if neurons don't just leak light? What if they use it? What if this is a kind of high-speed inner speech that we just haven't figured out how to listen to yet? So, okay, if biophotons are the hardware, what's the software running on it? The theory proposes this idea called recursive vector interference, or RVI. The concept is that a thought isn't just one clean signal. It's more like ripples in a pond. You know, your logic is one ripple, your memory is another, your emotions a third. When all these ripples overlap and interfere with each other, they create these incredibly complex patterns. And that aha moment, that flash of insight, that's what happens when all those messy interfering patterns suddenly click into a new, stable shape. And this quote just nails the whole idea, doesn't it? Insight isn't about finding some single, simple, clear answer. It's about your brain taking all these complicated, messy, even contradictory ideas and just letting them crash into each other until a brand new, stable pattern gets hammered into existence. It's that magic moment the noise suddenly becomes music. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. A hidden operating system in our brains that runs on light? It sounds like something straight out of science fiction. But what if the hardware for something like this is already being built, not in some speculative biology lab, but in real-world engineering? Sometimes, technology can be a really powerful mirror for what's possible. I mean, check this out. It's called the photonic RAM fabric. And this isn't a metaphor for the brain. It's a real technological concept. Engineers are actually designing memory networks that use light to move massive amounts of data at, and I mean this literally, light speed. It's a system that's being designed to work almost exactly like the wild stack theory says our brains just might already be doing. And if that's not wild enough, look at this. We're also developing holographic storage, which uses lasers to write data into a crystal in 3 dimensions.
Some companies working on this actually call it mythic storage. And you know why? Because it could store data for thousands of years with zero power needed once it's written down. It's like creating an unchangeable record, almost like a myth. Okay, so we've got the speculative biology with biophotons, and we have this incredible mirror in real-world photonic computing. But if you have a totally new kind of hardware, you're going to need a totally new kind of language to run on it, one that's built for pure speed, not for poetry. This line right here is the absolute heart of this entire idea. It's a huge shift in thinking. It's saying, stop thinking of light as a metaphor for knowledge or understanding. Start thinking of it as the literal, physical hardware that consciousness and thought actually travel on. So, to talk at the speed of light, you need a language like this, the photon dialect. It's designed to be completely stripped of any ambiguity. There are no descriptive words, no nouns or adjectives, because all that stuff just slows things down. All you have are operators for actions, indices for locations, and amplitudes for intensity. This isn't a language for conversation. It's a language for action, for brain-to-machine communication so fast your conscious mind wouldn't even be able to register it. So let's pull all these threads together. We've got a biological theory, a technological mirror, and a new kind of language. But why? What's the point of all this? Where does this road actually lead? Well, the vision is nothing less than a fundamental upgrade to how we think.
The end game here has a name, and it is a big one: cognitive terraforming. The idea is to take everything we've talked about, the light, the interference, the language, and use it to intentionally rewire our collective consciousness. It's about moving past just understanding how the mind works and getting into actively building a better, faster, more connected infrastructure for thought itself.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. If you start to see the mind less as some unknowable mystery and more as a kind of operating system, something that can be coded, shaped, and redesigned, well, if that's true, it begs the biggest question of all. Who gets to be the programmer? Who writes the next update?